I'm going to make this official. I'm going to put it on the record, and then if you have any questions in the future, you can refer to this, all right? I grew up in the military. I grew up in military bases. As far as I know, my mother identified as Catholic, from an Irish Catholic background, and she was a virgin when she married my father. My father came from the background he did, which did not identify having a religious preference. When he met my mother, he was a virgin. He asked her father for her hand in marriage. Her father said there were some things he had to do if he wanted to marry his daughter. He did those things. He married my mother. They were virgins on their wedding night. So far as I know, neither one of them ever had another sex partner except each other until my mother died 2 years ago. That was the world I grew up in on one level. But at some point when I was young, somebody tried to invite my mother and father into a different way of life. I think they call it swingers. I think it had to do with that ring he had for a while that he didn't wear anymore after that. My mother was opposed, so my father respected my mother's wishes. I believe this had profound consequences on my father's options for advancement in the military. Let's put it that way. Now, when I was going to high school, I understand that I had already been selected as somebody that would be a good test case for the emerging political paradigm that has now been called transgender rights. This has been something I've experienced on one level ever since I was a little girl. I always thought I was supposed to be a little boy. And so when I left to go to college, being the first person in my family to go to college, I entered into a milieu where a concept of lifestyle and preferences became very different. And I made a political decision to identify as a lesbian in order to remove myself from a situation where it was understood that I was supposed to be property of a man, conveyed as property to another man by virtue of my father relinquishing his rights to me as property, and then allowing for me to be married to a man who assumed his rights to me as property through the marriage contract. And so concepts of sex and what sex meant were about adults being honest and forthright with their desires and being able to communicate what they were and what their limits are. And beyond that, it really shouldn't have been anybody's business. But it did not become politically possible for me to maintain an identity as a lesbian when the political paradigm around LGBTQA rights changed. And so at some point, I went through a catharsis, and I contend now that marriage between a man and woman is antithetical to whatever queer rights was about. I don't believe in marriage between people of the same sex. Marriage was a specific kind of paradigm predicated upon a specific kind of sociocultural heritage. You can't do one without the other. And insofar as many of us have been intentionally alienated for completely arbitrary political engineering purposes from the cultures we actually come from, then we have a right to make a determination about how we want to comport ourselves in accordance with consent regarding the community and the partner or partners we have in our life. I've been intentionally celibate for many years because A, my sexuality is not the first thing you should have any concern about when it comes to me. B, I don't believe in using sex as commerce, especially in the stead of being able to actually articulate your capacity to make an informed decision about anything else in your life. And C, it's for a political reason. At some point in time, I was lied to, and I was told I had a mental illness when I did not. That was somebody else's political decision. But if you determined I was mentally ill and I needed somebody to look after my affairs or my best interest because I had some sort of error in judgment and being able to make decisions about my own life, what right do you have to farm me out for sex? What right do you have to not provide me with my rights to due process and expect me to do a goddamn fucking thing involving sex? Did you intentionally create women and maybe men as being mentally disabled, so you could try to contrive and manipulate them into acts of prostitution for your benefit? You cannot have any fucking expectation of me in anything having to do with sex until you deal forthrightly with the fact that you let me get kidnapped and tortured for drug dealers that charged it to public health insurance. And even if they transferred me halfway through so they could put the rest of the billings on a private insurance plan so they had special primary access, it was still insurance fraud. It was still kidnapping. It was still an attempt to force drug me. And any expectation of my sexual performance connected to it, including the initial economic event that he confirmed for himself with an understanding that he would be able to convey it later down the pipeline, is rape. Every single event. You raped a woman you wanted people to believe was mentally disabled. You raped mentally disabled people. You understand? And there is a way to pay for that. You owe society